Hi, Andy. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's terrific. I really enjoy my interviewing process. It's just great finding out what everyone's up to. So can you introduce yourself and tell me a bit about your involvement in the creative arts?
Yeah, my name's Andy Berriman. I'm based in Teesside. Obviously, I'm guessing, based on the name of this project. And yeah, I'm a writer and director of film, occasionally theatre as well. And I'm an out-and-out filmmaker as well. So I shoot, I edit, do pretty much everything. That's how I make a living. Yeah, mainly a film and occasional theatre maker.
Brilliant. So just put it, so you're one of the 2 million people who make their living through the creative arts in this country. I'd little bit getting that in early because I think it's completely neglected what a vast contribution that the creative industries make to the UK economy and how many people are employed in it, when you think that there's only 24,000 people in the fishing industries and what a say they seem to have in the way that the our nation is run. I kind of the 2 million people in the creative industries maybe should become a bit more self-aware. So I'll get off my high horse now. And so have you always been involved in creativity? Did you come from a creative background? How did you get into it all?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been creative. I think it was always encouraged. It was always sort of part of the landscape. As a kid, I was always drawing things. I was always designing things. I was designing houses and designing cars, and I have to say, I think even though I don't have a particularly arty family, creativity has always sort of been something that has come quite naturally, I think. Yeah.
So cars and houses sounds like Buckminster Fuller, who's one of my. He invented a car that ran on compressed air back in the 1950s, and a completely self-contained house that could be moved by helicopter.
Wow. Yeah. Wasn't quite that sophisticated, but I was always just drawing something. So so yeah.
So and then what path led to there? Did you go straight? Did you like go to university, or did you just get out there and start making films?
While I was at school, I got into drama, doing school plays and things like that. Had a very encouraging teacher there, and actually had sort of quite there was a group of us all the same age in the same year who just seemed to have an affinity for it, and I think that's quite important, isn't it? Is when you have a peer group who have talent and passion and thing, and you can kind of grow up with it together. So when we were 16, we actually set up a theatre company and we started producing stuff independently, and we put some plays on at Arc, which by all accounts were pretty good for a bunch of 16-year-olds. It would have been, I don't remember the timeline, but it would have been about the time I just started to get into films. I was watching things like, starting off with things like The Matrix and Gladiator, and the Lord of the Rings films came out when I was about 15, and sort of on the cusp of still having a kind of an imagination, but realizing that, okay, well, I'm not going to actually ever be an elf, am I? So what's the real adventure here? And it's maybe making films is the real life adventure, and I think it was that I'm watching the makings of, and it was the time when DVDs were kind of getting packed full of extra features, and you got to see lots of behind the scenes and this very sugar-coated view of what it's like to make films. And I think that is what inspired me to. I probably in a parallel universe would have gone to drama school and pursued being an actor, but I think it was that sort of finding just falling in love with movies which made me go down a different path. I did a year at uni, York St John, in a film and TV production course, but I dropped out. I wasn't enjoying my time there. And then I was really lucky that I got the opportunity to go to film school in London. So I did a 1-year practical filmmaking course in the Met Film School, which is based at Ealing Studios. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice, terrific. So I love that spirit that quite a lot of people have clearly shown, where they've just got a passion and they've just gone out and made it happen.
Yeah, I think it's a thing of being young as well, isn't it? It's like I think it's probably quite an important component of being really quite pig-headed when you're young. It's like, no, this is what I'm going to do, you know, despite maybe better judgment. But yeah, here I am.
Yeah, I kind of, it seems to be quite a generational thing, really. It's like people of my age, really, most of, while I've not met anyone that I've interviewed that wasn't kind of forced to do proper qualifications.
Sure, yeah.
And we've slowly managed to make our way back into the creative arts and make a life for ourselves here, whereas it's been really encouraging to see that people of a younger generation haven't kind of been forced to give up their dreams. And
yeah, probably totally take that for granted, to be honest. Yeah, it's probably a privilege, another invisible privilege. So yeah. No, I'm very, very grateful that I was encouraged to do that instead of something else.
Yes, absolutely. You even interviewed somebody who Michael Colwell. He had been offered a chance to go and study art in Sunderland when he was 15 years old, and his dad said, no, get yourself down the pit. And so
right.
But he is now an artist and a tattoo artist, and it's been brilliant to hear his journey of how he got back to all that.
Yeah. Good.
But how do you go about your work? Do people send you scripts? Do you write your own scripts? Have you got a production company? How does it work?
Well, it's hard, really. I mean, the films that make my living are not particularly, well, I won't say they're not creative. I guess there's a level of creativity involved in everything. But how I make a living, I'm making commercial, I'm making corporate films, using the skills to make promotional material and training films, or whatever. So in that case, it's you build up a client base, you make connections and form relationships with people, and they when they bring work to me on a ad hoc basis, and when it comes to the, shall we say, more arty side of things, so yes, the 2 funded shorts I've made, I wrote and directed. I make music videos as well occasionally. In that case, it's as you might imagine, it's that an artist has a song that they're wanting to release, and they'll send me the song, and then it varies. It depends whether, so some of them want very little involvement in they just want me to provide the ideas and go off and make that, and some of them want to be slightly more involved. I'm not sort of really massively entrenched in that I don't have an agent. I'm not working with a production company. I'm not pitching on music videos left, right, and center. It tends to be people I've made them for in the past, and I've got personal relationships with, and they sort of come to me when they have something. So it's a much more informal and like holistic approach. It's usually like, I don't need to make like a beautiful pitch document. I'm just like, oh, I'm thinking something along these lines, and they're like, yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. Sure, it'll be fine. And just we go with that, really. So yes, but I do write, and I do work with or have friends who are writers who I'd love to get stuff off the ground with, but it's you only have, it's, you don't get many opportunities to make especially funded work. So for every 10 projects you have, 10 or 20 projects you have on the go, you might make one or two of them. So yeah. Does that answer your question? I don't
Yes,
know.
Absolutely. Sorry, I got slightly
Yeah.
distracted there. This is a lockdown project. I've got one of my kids celebrating in there, and yeah. So sorry about the carnage. These
Not at all.
are going to be online unedited, but when it comes to the actual film, it'll be a lot more professional. So why, I guess, why as a kid were you driven to write plays, to get stuff put on? What is it about art that makes you want to engage with it? And what place do you think art plays in society more generally?
It's a really hard question to answer without sounding like a real douchebag, isn't it? But why? Well, for me it is anyway. Maybe it's because I'm a douchebag. I think it's just how I don't know if it's a natural thing or a kind of a nurture thing or a bit of both. I'm sure it probably is both, like most things. I think it's just how I understand the world is through stories. It's just like the lens through which you see. I don't know what came first. Now I know that if especially if I'm in a new place, in a new city or a place I've never been, my mind just goes into complete overdrive, and it's just like, oh, what kind of story could take place here? And I don't know if it's because I've been engaging with that for so long, or if it is just my brain's natural way of processing an experience is to try and figure out what the story is or could be. And I feel like that it makes sense that I would have always done that. I'll have always things would have just gone through a filter of imagination primarily. And I guess that isn't true of everybody. Maybe other people might appreciate things from a different angle. But yeah, it sounds like a really wanky answer, but I think it's just sort of innate and kind of a natural, just a natural response to things. I think. Yeah.
It doesn't sound wanky to me at all. I'm wondering, do you know Jeanette Winterson?
No.
Writer, a series, Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, was based on her books. But she really believes in the power of storytelling. She has a book called The Passion, in which the repeated line over and over again is, "Trust me, I'm telling you stories," and really resonated with me. And there's this great night with Jeanette Winterson on YouTube where she's just talking about the power of stories, and she's talking about her mum, who was deeply religious, saying Mrs. Winterson would never let books in the house. She knew if I started reading, all would be lost. And the idea that we are all a narrative and we're all created, and once we realize that everything is created through stories, then we can take back that agency and rewrite the story of ourselves and the story of the whole world collectively. It was wanky at all. I think that was a brilliant answer.
Cool, thank you. And there was another part, wasn't it? Society. Yeah, I mean, try not to give you the sort of stock liberal answer, which I'm totally on board with, by the way, but like, try and give you something a bit different. And I do sort of feel like, I think creativity is one thing, and I think everybody's creative, and I think it's the point of life, and every single job, every single act in life requires a degree of creativity, I fully think everybody is creative, whether they consider themselves or not. The arts, I think they're as important to you as they are, or they aren't. I think, and I think that's fine. I do absolutely believe that everybody should be given the opportunity and access to discover if the arts are important to them or not. Beyond that, I think it's an individual thing. You know, they're massive for me. They've given me like a purpose in life. But equally, I don't think that it's something that people should be expected to engage with if they don't want to. But they should absolutely be given the chance to see if they do want to engage with them, if that makes sense. And but on a wider scale, of course, they contribute an enormous amount to society in ways that we don't. Even people who really engage in it probably don't appreciate. You know, I'm sure I'm not recognizing the impact that certain art has had on changing the world for the better, you know. But yeah, I think it should be an individual thing, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And it's been interesting for me, you know, homeschooling, to see how much of the curriculum is art based and not very much, and
yeah,
how well taught the curriculum is. You know, trying to get teenagers into poetry by via Shakespeare's, you know, maybe not. So
yeah.
put it out there. And one thing that I have also, I just feel like that the arts stop people hanging around in gendered packs. So maybe not so much in music, which is still kind of a little bit not entirely, but a little bit gendered.
Yeah.
I think, you know, certainly when I was at uni, it and you know, all through school, like the areas in which the girls and the boys mixed was when they were doing arts. So
yeah.
And I haven't really thought about that until this interview.
No, that's a really brilliant point. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's about sort of releasing the word creativity from, you know, an arts and crafts kind of thing. You know, maybe it's about if we can all embrace the fact that humanity is innately creative. It has to be. When you look at, you know, all the wonderful and terrible things that we've done, they're incredibly creative. And yes, but no, but I can totally see your point, how the arts can make space for a much, certainly more than, not to make sports the kind of arch nemesis of arts, like the, but you know, but I can see how, yeah, you can see how the arts is a much easier space for people to not get stuck with their own kind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive fan of sport. I'm a massive fan of football. I absolutely love sideline Sundays when I go and cheer the lad on. But it's absolutely horrific, really, that up to the age 11, it's girls and boys in the same team, and then at that age they're like split apart.
Yeah.
And quite often there aren't enough girls to have a girls' team, so that's it.
Yeah.
It's a real shame. But anyway, I'm getting all political again. So. So lockdown, how's it affected your work, and have you got a kind of roadmap out of it?
Yeah, but well, it did badly. It took away all my, and you know, as I said, that's all sort of commercial and corporate, really. You know, I have to say that I didn't really fall through cracks in terms of the government support, so I did receive that, and
it's absolutely tremendous to find someone who
yeah, and I guess just because as a self-employed person, you know, I kind of who's kind of been honest on his tax returns for the past, I kind of reaped the benefit of that. So I wouldn't want to paint a false picture of some enormous struggle throughout it. It was obviously concerning and worrying, but honestly, it brought out the best in me in a lot of ways. I had all this time and no work-related stress or anxiety, and I was just running every day and writing every day, and I got into this rhythm. I read that Graham Greene, who's one of my favorite writers, only wrote 500 words a day, and I thought, if that's all right for Graham Greene, I can muster 500 words a day. And I started I picked a film idea I've had for a long time, and I started to write it as if it was a novella in the Graham Greene style. And I mean, I was very strict, I was very disciplined with myself, and I wrote these 500 words a day, and I just kind of like picked up where I'd left off the last day, and I just sort of like riffed my way through this story. And for the most part, it was terrible, but I was never been happier than having that discipline and that routine that I'd never had before. And I would blame work and being a freelancer and having no really structured routine, because it was completely based on when work came in, and I was just fitting my life around that, and I would use that as an excuse for not having a strict creative discipline. And I'd be like, no, that's not good enough, you need to find one anyway. But there was something in it, because when that was taken away from me for 3 months, I was able to get into that routine, and despite the fact that the world was on fire, I was able to find a real sort of happiness in that simplicity of having nothing else to do but just do my 500 words a day and look after myself. And it has kind of given me a strange kind of roadmap, in that I sort of know that maybe that is if I could achieve that kind of life in normality, one which is just based around simplicity and routine and a very simple discipline, that there's a real kind of solid kind of happiness in that. You don't need to be, I learned I don't need to constantly have 10 different things on the go, and to feel really busy, and to feel like I've got my fingers in all these pies, to feel valuable, to feel like I'm doing something properly. There's real happiness in just that kind of routine, discipline, and focus. Just finding that focus, because you've got nothing, because I had nothing else to focus on, was really cool. So I've got to say, obviously not discounting the horrific nature of what was going on. I was really, really lucky in that I didn't feel like financially I was going to be destitute, and I managed to use the time to discover something about myself. So I've kind of almost embarrassed to say I had quite a tough experience.
Don't be embarrassed, because a
Yep.
lot of artists have really appreciated the time out.
Yeah.
Really interested, like you saying, the world's on fire. Like, the world has literally been on fire, and I think perhaps if we all step back and found a more simple, less consuming way to live, then we might be able to put some of the fires out. And coming back to Buckminster Fuller, he calculated I think it was back in the 1980s, that in terms of real wealth, which is planetary resources and human intellect, the world would be much better off if we paid most people $40,000 a year to stay at home, and to use that time and space to think about what they'd actually like to do, and to get out and do that. So, that's maybe what we've had here, and maybe essential in stopping our planet from becoming uninhabitable for our species. So maybe not wanting to say the Great Reset and get annihilated by people who are on that case, but yeah, maybe time for a big rethink, and maybe that's the opportunity we've had. Andy, a real joy to talk to you. It's been I've had such a lovely morning. I feel really privileged to be this project where I get to just talk to amazing creative people all day. And there will be a big party at the end of this when we can, down at the auxiliary, and I really look forward to meeting you in person.
That would be great. That'd be wonderful. Thank you for having me.
A joy. Toodle pip.
See you.